So where we're located, as I mentioned, it's a very rural area, and we started right at the beginning of COVID. So we grew quite quickly, starting from the 2-car garage all the way into a 10,000 square foot building within a year. So we grew very, very quickly. So that comes with growing pains, of course, and staff challenges.
From scrappy founders to 8-figure success stories, we're busting startup myths, getting raw insights from market-tested entrepreneurs, and revealing the proven playbook for bootstrapping your B2B startup to 5 million. This is the Startup Different podcast. Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Startup Different. I am David. This is Chris, and today we have Alicia Hardman. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
I'm super happy to have you here. Wine, cider, all things I'm interested in.
Yes. Yes.
So what's interesting about having you on today is we generally don't have that many people who come on that have like a physical product in this sort of way. Like something that needs the warehouse, needs the shipping. I mean, you also have like the complexity of like the LCBO and all these other sort of like buying boards and stuff like that. So I'm like super interested in your business. And I think there'll be some people listening today who are in this sort of space. You know, we're not just a SaaS, software as a service podcast. No pressure. But can you tell us about your journey? Tell us all about how, you got to wine,
Yeah, no, totally. I'll start kind of from the start. So I grew up on a farm, so 100 acres of apples, 100 acres of everything else you can think of. So my roots is farming, but I did steer away from that. I went off and I actually was in the healthcare industry for 7 years. Really enjoyed that, but I knew it wasn't my forever thing. I wanted to start my own thing. I actually did recreation. So I did events coordinating for seniors.
Oh, cool.
And I really enjoyed that because I love people. Yeah, kind of an interesting switch for sure. So I really loved the people aspect of it, but I wanted to create my own something, my own product of some sort. At that time, I didn't know what it was. It wasn't actually until my husband and I, we really enjoyed going to wineries and cideries and breweries. That was kind of our pastime hobby that we did. I left a winery one day after getting a tour from the owner and just felt super inspired. Like she just was putting it all out on the line and sharing her story, and it was super inspiring to me. And I left the winery and I said to my husband after a couple of drinks in, I said, I can see myself doing that. I'd like to start a winery. Yeah. And just knowing he was about as crazy as I was, if not crazier, instead of saying like, what? He right away said, okay, if that's what you want to do, let's do it.
Hey, Dave here. Let me tell you a little secret. When we were building AppArmor, we needed to move fast, especially with quotes and invoicing. FreshBooks made that possible. Yeah, this is an ad, but seriously, FreshBooks was essential. My sales team could send sharp quotes in minutes, and it automatically handled millions in invoices and reminders. No chasing, no stress, just cash flowing in. It was so easy to get paid. It's built for small businesses by folks who get it. And yeah, like us, they're Canadian. What's not to like? If you want to spend less time on paperwork and more time growing your business, head to freshbooks.com and start your free trial. Trust me, it's a game changer. And now, back to the show. I kind of feel like this is like the retirement dream I have for myself is I would buy an old vineyard, maybe not that big, and you can laugh at this as much as you want because you actually understand the complexity of it, but buy like a vineyard, I can work the land and we'll have these bottles of booze that I can sell, and it's a nice, easy retirement job. But from what I understand, it's actually very intense and it's very difficult. My take on making wine and cider is like, okay, step 1, grow the thing. Step 2, step on the thing. Tell me how I'm wrong about this, because I got to believe this is incredibly capital intensive and difficult.
Yeah, definitely. My youngness was an advantage at that point, and just like not having a lot of experience, skills in the industry, financial backing up, all these things were against me. So I had no right really, but I was passionate and I was eager and I was willing to do whatever it took to get to that point.
How many years ago was this?
This was, so we started in 2019.
What's the name too? Tell people.
It's called Shale Ridge Estate Winery and Cidery. Mm-hmm. So we're located, 2.5 hours from Sarnia. So from Toronto. So we're in between London and Sarnia is where we're located. Most people know it as Grand Bend, but we're actually in Thetford.
Okay.
But yeah, so one day we were starting, the process of beginning the business, getting the licensing, figuring it all out. We had planted an acre of vineyard, got a $100,000 entrepreneur startup loan, so started with very little.
Oh, from where?
From Farm Credit Canada.
Farm Credit Canada. Okay.
Yeah, so then realized, oh shit, it's going to take like 4 years before these grapes start to harvest.
Wait,
What's
you didn't
next?
know that before?
No, at the time we just thought we were going to go full on with the wine, and realize, okay, this is going to take a little bit more time. So once again, just not knowing a lot, but being willing to do whatever it took. So then we were like, okay, well, when life gives you apples, you make cider. So coming from the farm, growing lots of apples growing up. So we started making cider in our 2-car garage. And that's how it got going. The first batch was awful. I won't lie to you, but you learn from your mistakes, right? And so we made another batch and it was a lot better. And next thing you know, we're a full-on production facility in our 2-car garage. We even went as far as cutting a truss in the ceiling of our garage to get one of the tanks in. So it was quite the sight to see. Yeah. But you got to start somewhere. So
yeah, I love that. We were, it reminds me of a lot of like Hewlett Packard, HP, like starting in the garage.
Like that's the joke that, the startup started in the garage. That's amazing.
So, but like, and I don't want to go, I want to, obviously for our audience today, we want to talk about like business principles and that kind of stuff, but I'm very interested in this process because it's something that I'm sure I could go and like read about it and figure out, but it's interesting to hear from someone like you who's been like really through it. Like, cause you went from like actually zero knowledge of this to we're going to do it and not knowing that this is going to work out for the grapes and all this stuff. So like, what's involved? Even let's just start with cider. So you've got step 1, apples. Okay. What happens after that? What's the next piece?
Yeah. So actually, we got a book off of Amazon, cider making
I
handbook.
love this story.
And,
this is so hustle focused.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
And literally just watched some videos on YouTube. That was a big asset for us, just understanding the science of it and whatnot. But yeah, no, it's not as hard as you think. I mean, like when you're passionate and you're willing to do whatever it takes and apply yourself, you're going to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
But what you do is so what we do particularly is we harvest the apples once a year off my family farm. And then we bring them over to a farm actually in the same block as where we are called Twin Pines Orchards. And they press the apples for us there. So they'll crush them and and then they'll press them and then you get sweet cider. So I'm sure you've seen the very kind of brownish, fresh pressed apple cider in the grocery store. Sure. So that's basically what we're starting with. It's quite sweet. It's about 130 grams per liter. So it starts off really, really sweet. Wow. But yeah, it's quite... not my thing, but some people like it sweet. And then what you do is you introduce the yeast, and the yeast quite literally just eats the sugar and turns it into alcohol. So very similar to making wine, of course. Sure. Yeah. Similar process, but yeah, that takes about 2 weeks, and then you have your hard cider.
Wow.
So,
but like the yeast though has got to be like a really specific like temperature, like really specific conditions.
It does. Yeah.
Because I like having failed at making my own beer one time, although I am also a sourdough bread enthusiast, so I know a little bit about the yeast and kind of like the naturally occurring process and all that But so why did your first batch suck? I mean, you did these videos, you did like you leaned in, right? You were trying to figure this out.
Totally. I think it was the wrong yeast. We were experimenting with different yeast at the time, figuring out what worked for us.
Yeast?
There's all different yeast.
See, this
so
is
depending on what profile you're going for.
But now there's different yeast.
Yeah,
I never knew that.
Yeah, there is. There's different yeast, and then of course, it all has to do with the apples you're using as well. So we were trying to tweak our recipe, what kind of varieties were working better, if we wanted more of a tannic or a sweeter or drier. Like there's lots of variables that you have to consider. So I think just not understanding all of that at the beginning and then realizing more after trying it and, understanding that side of it, we were able to realize where we need to make those tweaks with the apple varietals, the yeast, and things like that.
So you were like iterating. You were rapidly iterating your product, trying to find out so we're going into that. Like, we love talking about the MVP. It's like that minimum viable product concept where it's like, okay, you build, measure, learn. So you built out your first product, the cider. You measured, you took a step, you went, that sucks. You measured the things you were doing and you learned from that. You improved it, you changed it, and you kept doing that till you basically got to your recipe nowadays.
Exactly.
And how often do you change your recipe now, or is it mostly the same?
Not often. Right. No, once you get something good, why fix something that's not broken, right?
It's consumer taste, right?
Exactly.
So if you don't want to deviate from that because you could lose consumers pretty quickly.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you also experiment with some other fruits to make beverages from those.
Yeah, definitely. So we have our core lineup. So our peach apple cider has been our fan favorite by far, so we stick with that one always. But we do like to introduce a seasonal cider. So every quarter we'll introduce something new. So right now we have one called Harvest Spice. So it's really nice for the holiday season.
Cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
it's fantastic. I won't lie to
We have
you.
some right here.
Here we
Yeah,
go.
let's go. Yeah, sounds lovely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
so we're about keeping things interesting, keeping the market, interested in new things, and we find that that's a great way to do that.
So then let's draw a line from cider to wine. Similar process, vastly different. What was that experience like?
4 or 5 years.
Yeah. There's a couple that. Well, I'm assuming a lot of this iteration is happening annually because you got to grow these apples, and then they're only available at that time.
Exactly.
They harvest them all at the same time, right? So.
Yeah.
So you're a couple of years into this, you've got a better cider product. Do you have some traction? Like, let's talk about your business at this point. And then you make this move into wine. How does that go?
Yeah, for sure. So as I mentioned, it takes a few years before you actually get a grape harvest. So we're buying our grapes in from Niagara. So a couple select vineyards that we were sourcing them from, similar terroir to what we have on our property. So we have a lot of shale ridge. We're quite literally on a ridge as well.
Oh.
So yeah,
Literal name.
quite literally.
Functional.
So a lot of benefits of that. But yeah, looking for similar tasting profiles, minerality with the shale that you're getting, and sourcing that from other grape farmers that also are growing a lot of grapes and can't make wine with them all. So why not support other local farmers? So that's the path that we've taken, because we aren't able to actually grow the amount that the demand that we're selling. So we've been utilizing that. But yeah, the shift definitely was interesting, and there's definitely a lot more to wine we found. The cider drinker was more laid back, more relaxed, more willing to try something new.
The snootiness of wine.
So we definitely realized that. So with that being said, we were able to actually hire a winemaker with a lot more experience and knowledge, and put out a more premium product in that sense.
So you're hiring people. So let's shift to the team here for a second. And you haven't said much, but I'm hoping this is okay. So let it ride. So first off, husband is co-founder.
Yes.
How is it being married to your co-founder? How do you not talk about work 24/7? How do you deal with the business disputes? Now, I have I'm not married to Chris, he is my brother, but there's like the family connection there, and so I understand some of that. But I feel like it's fundamentally different though with a partner.
Definitely. And myself, I came from a very traditional conservative household. My family didn't take risks. So the fact that I came out one day and said, I'm going to start a cidery, they looked at me like I had two eyes. They're like, are you nuts?
Yeah.
You know nothing about it. So I grew up in that realm. And then Garen grew up on the opposite. So he grew up with a family that were more risk takers. The sky's the limit, dream as much as you can. So we definitely, at the starting phases, it was a little bit more scary for me to take this leap. But for him, it was just let's do this. He was more, I guess, willing to go that mile. So definitely, it has been a journey of him and I being founders together, and understanding and navigating and just finding our lanes more, and being willing to.
So I think I'm kind of like you in that I'm more risk averse and conservative. Whereas Dave's on the other side, where he's much more of a risk taker and willing to go after different opportunities. So we're kind of on different ends of the risk spectrum.
Yeah, 100%. And having some of those skills that I assume he has a different skill set than you offer, and I'm not exactly sure how you break down your roles in your company. But for example, I would do sales and marketing, that kind of stuff, and also do HR, because those are things that I could do reasonably well, or at least better than Chris. But that Chris also hated. I was the lucky one that got HR.
I have that role too.
Yeah, okay. I want to talk about that in a second for sure. And then, on the flip side, Chris is doing the software development, that kind of stuff. So I wonder, your husband's skill set, is he I'm just going to ask a series of dumb questions, but is he more into the grapes, or is he more into what do you each bring to the table? And one more thing on this too is that one thing that we've noticed, and we write about it in our book, is that one thing that's nice for founders is when there's not just a very strict delineation of what each one does, but an overlap of understanding, where you can kind of, maybe you're not as good at something else, but you understand that process. So how does that work for you and your husband?
Yeah, very good question. I would say Garen is more of the visionary, so he's more of the one that likes to build the infrastructure, for example, and I'm more of the person that's the people person. I'm, the face, I guess you could say.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, There is definitely overlap with our goals, like our core values. I find they're in alignment.
Yeah.
It's just his skill set is more the visionary. I'm more the integrator and the people person.
Right.
If that makes
You're like
sense.
the operator, I feel like a
Yes,
bit more. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I could totally, I 100% get that. And again, I think it's important that you have these like distinct perspectives and distinct skill sets, but then just sort of get each other though too. Like you just like, you let him take certain stuff on because he's the better person for it.
Exactly.
I think that a lot of the time where people run into trouble is when the two co-founders have very similar skill sets and then really want to take on the same parts of the business. And that's when you run into these sort of like business breakups, so to speak, over the longer term, because they feel like they're being left out or they're not able to do their thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
How do you usually deal with disagreements?
Oh, geez.
Whoever yells louder?
Well, yeah, I mean,
I'm quite loud as well. So
we've definitely had our moments. I mean, that's family, right? When you get involved in a family business, it's not an easy thing, right? So yeah, we've definitely had our moments, but it just more or less comes down to, okay, like you have to kind of sit back and just think for a moment. What is the logical answer? What is the facts here? You know, and sometimes it just takes me to just take a step back and think about that.
Right.
Like, okay. I hate to say it, but he's right.
Yeah,
Gosh, darn it. Or vice versa. So just coming to that realization and just taking a step back for me.
Yeah. But so let's zoom out. So that's like the two of you. Now, how many staff do you have at this point? Because I believe most of the time the cideries and wineries are like reasonably capital intensive. Like
yes,
it takes a lot of like
definitely.
not just for like the stuff to make the wine, but just the people. Like you got to get the raw product, and collecting that can be challenging. So how many staff do you have?
So we currently have about 20 staff.
Okay.
4 of those are full-time, and then the rest are seasonal part-time.
Okay, sure.
So where we're located, as I mentioned, it's a very rural area, and we started right at the beginning of COVID. So we grew quite quickly, starting from the 2-car garage all the way into a 10,000 square foot building within a year. So we grew very, very quickly. So that comes with growing pains, of course, and staff challenges. So that was something I definitely struggled with at the beginning as well, is just getting the passionate team on board with, the alignment vision of what we had for Shale Ridge. So we've definitely, it's been a process finding those right people, and it's a whole nother thing on its own.
So what did your family say when you said we're going to move out of the garage into a 10,000 square foot building? That must have been a huge shock.
It was to me too. No.
I too was shocked. Yeah.
It was always kind of the plan, but it came faster than we imagined, which is a blessing and a curse, of course.
Yeah.
I think what the big thing is we introduced swing tables, is what they're called. I don't know if you've seen them online, but we're very famous for our swing tables. So Garen is, as I mentioned, the builder and the creator. So I had seen a photo on Facebook and said, I really think that this could be something. Like this would be a really big draw. And he's like, well, I'll make them then. So he made these swing tables and we launched them. I believe it was summer of 2021, and they were sold out all summer and all fall.
Wait, what does it do? Do you spin it? Is it like kind of?
It's a table and there's swings, and you quite literally sit on these swings and you have a wine tasting. It's like very
like a swing
Instagrammable, exactly, except with a table.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think I saw that on your website. There was like a photo of your dog on it, and I had what is that?
So you actually have another product then, which is this thing, or like you're actually selling these, or these are just at your facility?
We're definitely, like I said, we're making a premium product, wine and cider, but a really huge part of our business as well is the experience side of things. So creating unique, unforgettable experiences. Cool. And that's something that the swing table is. So people coming from far and wide just to have their photos and have that experience. Yes.
Capitalizing on Instagram. Like I feel like when I go on vacation to like certain beaches and stuff, there's like for some reason there's like a swing set in the middle of the beach, and you're like, this is only for Instagram.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just so people can be like, look at me. You know what I mean?
It brings back really good memories as a child. Like I call them smiley tables because quite literally when you sit on them, your mood just lifts and you just feel so
really cool.
free. Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of an interesting segue because I'm sure there's some people listening today too, physical product or not, that are like, how do you get started in like a consumer market? Like, how did you, like, we have a podcast and it's tough. It's really tough to get, it's like going on social media is like yelling in a room of people yelling. So how do you get some how did you get your first customers? And now you said you were starting up right at the start of the pandemic.
Yes, we
So
did.
That probably helped because as I understand, like alcohol sales went way up at the start of the pandemic. But how did you get there? Like, how did you get somebody to try it?
Well, I will say that my family was on board for the trying part of it. So we had a very willing tasting panel, which helped, but a really great community, really small community, as I mentioned. So at that time, there wasn't a lot to do. So like that was a plus for us. So people were looking for local things and trying something different and exciting, because there wasn't a lot of exciting things going on at that time,
for
right?
sure, yeah.
So that definitely helped us. So we started curbside pickup, was a huge thing for us, local delivery. I loaded my Jeep up and did deliveries all over the place, whatever it took.
How did they even know? Like, how did they, so beyond your family, and I get that, you got the early tasters, but then like your first random, how did they know that you even existed? What was your, really tactically, what was your go-to-market strategy here?
Social media was definitely a huge part of it. Instagram was where we really found we were getting
all
organic a lot of traction.
Too, or you're
all organic. We didn't do anything like any kind of online ads or anything at that point, because we didn't have enough knowledge of that at that moment. But definitely just organic traffic we found through Instagram. Facebook as well was another big platform for us. Word of mouth. We had a couple really good just random articles. Actually, Narcity picked us up at one time, which was kind of huge for us.
Yeah.
So just a lot of organic.
And how did they hear about you? I find this
the swing tables.
Oh, the swing. Okay. So we're coming back to the swing tables.
Yes.
So really, the key here is if you're starting a cidery or winery, make sure you've got a swing table and or some sort of gimmicky. Yes. I don't want to call it I love the idea of it, a happy.
You have to have a draw.
Something different. You definitely differentiate it, because think about. I just think how busy your market is. There's a bajillion wines and a bajillion ciders. So how did you get any space? And it was because you did something a little bit different.
Exactly. We realized that having a really great product wasn't enough. You needed more than that. We needed to get people to our place to try our product. Mm-hmm. So what was the draw? How could we catch them? And we realized it was the swing tables for us. So coming up with something unique that people are I need to have that experience. I need to have that. That's what worked for us.
So during the pandemic, outdoor things were sort of okay. So how did that work out for you guys?
We did the production in our 2-car garage, but my husband also had another building on the site that he has his fabricating business. That's another one of our businesses. So I literally had taken a piece of his shop and made it into my store. It was really small. So it worked out because we had no seating capacity. So we literally just had all of our table and seating on our lawn. Nice. So our property, it's 13 acres, so it's a farm. But it was resourceful.
You had the space
to say the least.
For sure, yeah.
So on the show, we talk a lot about downstream effort versus upstream effort. And it strikes me that you guys were very fortunate that you had a lot of things that were going for you really well, because they were downstream effort. I think you said your husband had a machine shop and experience doing that sort of stuff.
Yes, he does.
Was that a big factor in your success?
I agree. As much as it was challenging, because like I said, I didn't have a lot of experience, knowledge. We didn't have angel investors. We did that on our own behalf, no co-signers. So we had a lot not going for us, but I agree. We had come across this property. We bought it in 2015. It was a dream. We looked at it a year prior and we're this would be the one. This is a real big dream. And a year later, the price had come down and we put a bid in and they took our offer within an hour or two. So it just all kind of came together when you look at it now, in my opinion. Just seeing the property's beautiful. We are overlooking a beautiful view on the ridge. And it just all kind of came together in a funny way.
Last thing before we wrap up here. So one thing we asked everybody on the show is about a startup myth. So you mentioned you didn't have any funding, which I thought was surprising because, again, you're a capital intensive business. But was there anything else that you think that people ought to know, or that would be helpful, or that was something that you didn't expect in starting your business that would be useful for folks listening today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of ways I can answer that, to be honest. But for me, it was just, like I said, I was starting a business that I knew nothing about, and I didn't have a lot of support in my circle, unfortunately. But I did have one person that believed in me, and that was my husband. Mm-hmm. I remember leaving work one day, and I contemplated in my head 1,000 times, and I did it. I met my husband at the driveway, and I said, guess what I did today? And he said, what? And I said, I quit my job. And he looked at me, and most people would be like, are you nuts? Why would you do that? But he looked at me, and he started kind of crying, and he was like, I'm so proud of you, Alicia. And to me, that's what I needed. I just needed that one person to believe in me, because I didn't have that. So for me, it's just, if you don't find that in your circle, find that within yourself, believe in yourself. because you can do anything you put your mind to.
I super admire that. Also, I probably would have given my wife a heads up. I'm thinking of quitting today. Then maybe text her after I did quit today.
Yeah.
I'll see you at home. But I really admire your bravery, and I'm super happy that it worked out because, for obviously a lot of businesses, it doesn't necessarily work out. So it's fantastic though, and congratulations on all your success.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Great story.
Thank you.
Folks, that's another episode of Startup Different. Thanks so much for joining us. Next week, we will be covering this as well, this interview, and we'll go a little bit deeper on some of the business principles we talked here today. But till then, thank you so much. And Alicia, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end of the episode. Nicely done. If you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so the almighty algorithm can help others find us. Want more from Startup Different? Check out our book, Startup Different, the myth-busting blueprint for your multi-million-dollar business. Follow us on social. We're big on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also check us out at startupdifferent.com. Special thanks for this episode to Graham and our friends at Toronto Podcasts. Visit them at torontopodcast.ca. See you next week.